much for watching again my videos, and for today I am going to discuss with you about moral development. So what is a moral development? Moral development is actually a process by which a person turns or goes into what we call the mature stage. So it is a process of maturity through the use of the collected beliefs, collected moral experiences that a person has undergone from infancy to what we call as adulthood. Now, in this process class, we have to undergo at least stages of what we call the moral development itself. So how you portray yourself into the society is actually rooted on your collected experiences. As we have said during the first discussion, that the mind of a certain individual is considered a blank sheet of paper or an empty cup of tea, where there is nothing written on it. There is nothing inside that empty cup when you are born, but as the time goes by that you grow older, you collect experiences that you have encountered throughout the days that you grow. And this moral development starts to transpire from the very first stages of what we call the development of the human mind, as defined by Lawrence Kohlberg. So there are three stages according to him. First is what we call the preconventional, next is the conventional, and the third is the post-conventional. So what is a preconventional stage of moral development? It refers to the sense of morality that exists among children, through which external control of significant others plays the major role. Well, you know very much that a certain individual, when he is born, doesn't know anything. He doesn't know how to walk, he doesn't know how to eat, he doesn't know how to put your clothes, because in the first place, we are born naked. Okay? So, the significant others plays a vital role in our moral development. We adopt some of the values, the characters, whether it is genetically or by means of emulating the acts or behaviors of the significant others. So who are the significant others? Actually refers to what we call first our parents, next one our close relatives, our friends, and members of the society to whom we had what we call this interrelationship. Okay? So once we communicate with them by means of words or by means of signs or actions, then the preconventional stage takes place, wherein their role as significant others to our lives is being recognized. So sino-sino ba in Tagalog itong mga tinatawag nating significant others? Well, significant others from the term significant, yun yung mga tao, okay, or nakapaligid sa isang individual na nakakatulong upang sa ganoon ay ma-develop, okay, or ma-mold ang behavior, ang values, or pag-uugali or personalidad ng isang tao. Okay. Sino-sino ba itong mga tao na to? Well, first, ito yung mga taong nakapaligid sa'yo. Kapag baby ka, sino ba ang unang-unang mag-aalaga sa'yo? Of course, your parents. So the significant others during that stage should always be your parents, your siblings, your nanny, yung yaya mo kung may yaya ka nung bata ka, okay, from which your first experiences in this particular world class will be encountered or will be experienced by you or collected by you through these people. So yung experience mo na unang-una kang naligo sa isang bathtub or sa isang planggana ng baby ka, okay? Sino ang may pakana nun is maybe it's your parents, or maybe it's your yaya, maybe it's your friend, or parents' friend, or neighborhood, or maybe your grandmother. Okay? The important thing is these people who help you experience these things. Okay? Those people who help you to learn or gain knowledge about things are what we call significant others. Now, during the preconventional stage, we have what we call the obedience and punishment orientation. This is the orientation that is usually practiced by children. What does it mean? Okay? This is simply the rule of obeying what is given as an instruction to you. Otherwise, you will be punished. Hindi ba kapag bata ka, pag sinabi ng nanay mo na gawin mo ito, okay? Especially if you are 2 years old, 3 years old, wherein you still do not have the capability to decide for your own self, and you still do not know what is right from wrong, and you do not even know the consequences of your action, you are still bound to obey the instruction of your parents. Pag sinabi niya, you fix your toys. Okay? So that instruction from your parent or from your mother maybe, okay, is an instruction that you are bound to obey. Bakit? Pag hindi mo siya sinunod, ano bang mangyayari? There is always be a punishment. There is always be a discipline that your parents is going to give you, or that your mother will always give you as a consequence of that particular action of yours. Okay? So yun yung tinatawag nating obedience and punishment orientation. You obey me, otherwise I will give you a punishment. Okay? Sabi ng tatay mo, you have to be inside the house before 6 o'clock in the afternoon or in the evening. Pag wala ka pa ng 6 o'clock sa bahay, sigurado pagdating mo, sesermonan ka ng parents mo, ng tatay mo, papaluin ka ng kuya mo, okay, or your guardian. So what is the consequence of that rule or that orientation? Yung pagsanay sa'yo ng ganoon, the consequence would be you are bound to obey. Wala kang magagawa kung hindi ang sundin ang instruction. Okay? Next, preconventional orientation is what we call the instrumental orientation. This is a reward incentive system wherein the basics of do this and I will give you this. So rewarding system, like for example a child, a 2-year-old child, when you try to teach him how to write, the tendency is napaka-igse ng span of learning niya. So madali siyang mapagod, madali siyang magsawa na sundin yung instruction mo. So what you are going to do is kumuha ka ng isang candy o kaya isang lollipop, and this always is true sa pagtuturo ng mga bata, okay? And you will encourage them this, sige na, you do it, because after you finish doing this, after you finish writing these letters or coloring your book, I will give you a reward, and this will be your reward. Okay? In that case, you are motivating the child to follow the instruction. You are encouraging the child to obey whatever orders are given to him. In that way, it's a win-win situation. Your instruction was obeyed, and the child was able to learn how to write or how to follow his book. So, instrumental orientation. You use instruments to encourage or motivate the moral development or to develop the morality of a certain individual. Okay? So that is what we call a preconventional. These things or orientations are usually used during the early stages of a certain individual. Now, what about the conventional stage? Now, under the conventional stage, the sense of morality is strictly based on adherence to rules and conventions. So, nakafocus ka lang dito sa conventional na kailangan kong sundin yung rule or instruction. Whatever be the consequence of that rule, as long as I follow that rule. Conventional states, especially this occurs during the teenage years of a certain individual, wherein the good boy or nice girl orientation comes into the picture. What is a good boy or good girl orientation? This is an orientation wherein a certain individual be regarded as a good boy or a nice girl if she follows or abide with the rules or ethical standards that is set forth in the society. Okay? So that is what we call the conventional stage. This individual is going to adhere or follow the rules and conventions or regulations that is set forth in society. Aside from that, so in a conventional stage, we have what we call the sense of morality, which are strictly based on adherence to rules or conventions or instructions, which does not take into consideration the consequences of an action. As I am saying, the good boy or the nice girl orientation comes into the picture, wherein this occurs usually in the teenage years of a certain individual, where he is bound or she is bound to follow rules regardless of whether that particular rule or instruction given to him or her is actually good, legal, or ethical. So, kumbaga, walang pakialam yung doer of the action or the moral agent or the individual, okay, for as long as he follows the rule. Hindi niya alam kung yung rule na yon is legal ba, unethical ba, or is it right or is it wrong. Okay. He doesn't concern himself into that picture. What he is concerned only is that he follows the rules. In order for him or her to be called as a good boy or a good girl. Okay? Kaya tinawag siyang good boy or good boy or nice girl orientation. Now, aside from that orientation, we also have what we call as law and order orientation on the conventional stage. So what is this law and order orientation? Abiding with the rules because it is important in maintaining the peace and order. So like for example, yung example natin kanila is the law on or the ordinance on what we call a curfew hour. Why do we need to abide with that particular rule? Aside from the fact that if you are not going to follow that rule, your father or your mother might get mad at you and give you a punishment. So aside from that fact, we already know that it is a rule that is very important in maintaining the peace and order. So kailangan kong sundin ito dahil ito ay isang batas. At kapag hindi ko ito ginawa or sinunod, okay, it might cause what we call a disruption of the peace and order. Okay. Lumabas ka ng alas 10 ng gabi, kung saan may curfew sa inyo alas 8. So anong mangyayari kapag lumabas ka at nakita ka ng mga barangay tanod? They would arrest you. And that, the process of arresting you will disrupt the peace and order that the society or your community should have been experiencing at that moment of time. Okay? So in this orientation, a certain individual needs to follow the rules or abide with the rules or regulation in order to conform with the peace and order mission of a certain political community where you belong. Okay, now, the third stage of moral development is what we call the post-conventional. From the term post, ito yung tapos na. Kumbaga, your moral or morality has already been reaching its end. Kumbaga, nasi-shape ka na, you are already becoming mature as a person. Okay, so from a certain young child to teenager, and then here comes your adulthood. Okay, so post-conventional. The sense of morality shifts now from obedience to reasoning. Kung dati nung bata ka, wala ka namang pakialam kung ano ang purpose kung bakit kailangan mong sundin yung sinasabi ng nanay mo. Basta ang alam mo lang is, susundin ko ito para mabigyan ako ng candy, susundin ko ito para hindi ako mapalo. Okay? Nung medyo tumanda ka na, okay, susundin ko ito. Wala akong pakialam kung tama ba yung instruction or order or law na binigay sa akin, or your order or instruction, for as long as matatawag akong good boy or nice girl kasi sinunod ko yung sinabi nila or yung law nila. Okay. At saka para sa ganoon ay ma-maintain yung katahimikan na environment ko. So kailangan kong sundin yung mga batas na yan. Okay? So your discipline is already being shaped. Now, on the post-conventional, it's already the moment or the time that you do not only consider the actions that you are going to make and the order or legalities or ethics of the order or instruction that were given to you, but you start to reason out. You start to use your logical reasoning to justify your actions, to look or foresee the consequence of your actions. So, here, you do or perform a particular act according to your free will, according to your wishes. Ito na yung mag-iisip ka na, paano kaya pag ginawa ko ito, ano kaya mangyayari? Pag magnanakaw ako, ano kaya mangyayari sa akin? It's either I will go to jail or I will die. Pero gagawin ko naman ito para sa ganoon ay maalis ko yung sarili ko sa sitwasyon ng pagiging pobre. So you are starting to give reasons. You use your logical or your reasoning, your ability to reason out to justify the things or your actions that you perform. The actions that you perform. Okay? So, dito na kasi class, we are already called as matured individual. In this post-conventional stage, there are what we call orientations that a certain person has to undergo. First is what we call the social contract orientation. In this social contract orientation, we are talking about the mutual respect of a certain person to varied laws or moral codes. Ito na yung tinatawag nating nare-recognize mo yung authority of other people and you start to respect at ina-appreciate mo or nare-recognize mo kung ano yung batas or kultura na meron sila na iba doon sa kultura mo or batas na meron kayo. Halimbawa, let's not go outside your homes. Halimbawa sa bahay nyo, there is a rule for you na bawal tumayo sa hapagkainan kung hindi pa natapos ang lahat ng family members to eat their dinner or their lunch or their meal. Okay, so bawal. Even if you're finished, you stay in your seat and wait for the last person to finish his meal. That's only the time that you're going to stand up and get out of your proper seats. Okay, iyon ang orientation sa bahay nyo. Now, you go to a particular, another home or a particular house of a friend, and that particular discipline or instruction or law that is being implemented in your own houses is not implemented on your friend's house. Sa kanila, okay lang. Nasa pagkainan na yung pagkain, ang ginawa lang nila, kinuha nila yung pagkain nila, pumunta sila sa harapan ng TV. Yung iba nasa sofa, yung iba nasa kwarto, yung iba nasa dining area eating their meals. And it's okay with them. Are you going to criticize that particular discipline or that particular instruction or order or law that is being set forth in their own houses? Of course not. You are already trying to respect. You give that respect to the discipline that they have inside their house. That is what we call social contract orientation. Because you're already matured enough, you're already trying to give reasons of their actions. Siguro kasi sa kanila sanay na silang ganyan. Mas komportable sang kumain sa karapat-dapat o hindi siya tumutugma sa norms of the society. Okay? Ito yung pangkalahatan or general norms of the society or the general ethical standards of the society. Ito yung mga dignity, equality, justice, and impartiality. Yan yung mga nilalagay natin na rason. O, paano mo sasabihin ng isang bagay or ang ginawa ng taong ito ay illegal? Bakit? Paano mo nalaman? It's because it doesn't give justice. The action does not give justice to what he does. It is unfair. Okay? Yung ginawa niya unfair. Oh. Those reasons that are generally practiced or accepted in the society can also be employed or used by us when we reach the post-conventional stage. Okay. So yung magiging reason natin ngayon is, huwag mong gawin yan. Do not act on that or do not perform an act like that because it doesn't conform to the general laws of the society or the general practice or social norms. It does not give you justice and it's unfair. Okay, so alam natin yun. That is the universal ethical principle orientation under the post-conventional. So again, moral development may take the preconventional, conventional stage, and post-conventional. Kaya kung tignan ninyo class, yung pag-shape ng character or moral development ng isang tao always starts at zero. Okay? Wala. And then you start to learn experiences, to gain knowledge through the help of your significant others. Okay? And the first that you are going to adopt would be the obedience and punishment orientation to the instrumental orientation until you reach your teenage years and you try to become the good boy or the nice girl by following the orders because you wanted to contribute to the maintenance of peace and order in your community until such time that when you do them, you will reach the post-conventional stage wherein you already shift being obedient to reasonable. Okay? So, hindi ko na siya fina-follow ang rule na ito. Hindi ko na siya or susundin ko siya hindi dahil ito ay ayon sa batas mo or para masabing nice girl ako or good boy ka, but I follow this instruction because it is my free will in accordance okay, to my reasoning. So justified naman yung pag-perform ko ng action na yan. So it's okay. Okay. So you are already becoming what we call as a mature. Now, let's go to lesson 2, which is the basics of moral experience. I told you a while ago, I should say, that the moral development starts from accumulation from the accumulation of certain experiences from your infancy to adulthood. Now, moral experience takes a leap on 3 aspects. So there are 3 aspects of what we call moral experience. First is knowledge. Okay? Karunungan. What is knowledge? Knowledge means you are aware of something. Okay? You want to know something about a certain action, about a certain belief, about a certain issue. So a person must be aware of what he is doing. What is the purpose or the motive? His intentions in performing the particular act. And what is his desired end or goal. So it simply combines or blends what we call the object and the subject. The subject is of course the seeking of truth. Okay? The object, I should say, is always the seeking of truth, and the subject is always the doer of the action or the moral agent. Who is the moral agent is, of course, us or the person. Okay? So knowledge is the accumulation of intelligence or informations. This is the process of being aware of what you want to achieve, under what purpose you're going to achieve this, okay? And that you know the consequences of what you are doing. So that is what we call knowledge. So the object of knowledge is that you always wanted to know the truth. The truth that the subject seeks or looks for in a given situation. Yun yung object. Now, aside from the aspect of knowledge, we also have the second aspect, what we call as the freedom of the will. Ito napaka-complex class na topic because it is innate in an individual that we have the freedom. We have our own choices, we have our own preferences. So this is actually referring to the authority of man to determine what action to take and to what his action is being based, or what is the reasons behind his action. Or it is simply being defined as your freedom of choice. So your liberty to choose between alternatives. Etong mga choices ko, ano ba ang dapat kong piliin? I have the freedom to choose what I like according to my reasons. According to my motive, according to my purpose, I have to choose from the alternatives. Without force or intimidation coming from other people. So may role pa ba ang significant others dito? Meron pa rin class but not to dictate but suggest or guide us in the choosing of the right alternative or option. Okay? So what are the components of the freedom of the will or elements of the freedom of the will or kinds or types of the freedom of the will? First is what we call the free will. Sabi ko nga kanina, it is innate or inherent to humans like us to have the freedom to choose what we like. Okay? Our free will, meaning to say our liberty to express what we want. So that is what we call free will. Next is freedom of choice. This is freely selecting or choosing from options or given alternatives. Ito yung sinasabi ko na kapag nagplano ka, kailangan may plan A, may plan B, may plan C. Because if plan A will not work, you use plan B. If plan B will still not work, then you have to use plan C. That is seeking the best choice among the alternatives. Freedom of choice. And when you choose, okay, there must be no intimidation, force, or influence coming from other people that would vitiate your will. Ibig sabihin, wala dapat makikialam doon sa choices mo, sa pag-choose mo or pag-pili mo ng alternatives or ng option mo, ng decision mo, pag-decision mo, wala dapat makikialam sa'yo. Walang magdidikta na ito ang dapat mong gawin. Walang magsasabi na dapat sundin mo ito. Or ito na lang ang kunin mo. Or ito na lang ang gamitin mo. Freedom. Freedom of choice. Next one is external freedom. It is the physical ability to act without restraint. Yan sinasabi ko. Yung ikaw mismo ang pipili nang wala kang kinakailangang ibang tao na tutulong sa iyo. Na alam mong pumipili ka na aayon doon sa kagustuhan mo at hindi ayon sa kagustuhan ng iba. You were not being hindered, you were not being restrained, you were not being prohibited from by any other person in making your own choices. External freedom. Next one is internal freedom. Kapag may external, may internal. External, from the word external, outside forces. And kapag internal, sa loob lang. Sa'yo mismo. Okay? Meron kang kalayaan na pumili na ayon sa gusto mo, na walang may dikta sa'yo. External freedom. May kalayaan kang mamili ayon sa kagustuhan mo at na ayon doon sa loob mo, then it's internal freedom. Ay yung wala kang duda sa sarili mo kung ano yung gusto mo doon sa choices na pinili mo, okay, or the steps that you choose, then that is what we call internal freedom. Parang sinasabi natin minsan na take it or leave it. Okay. Mamili ka, kunin mo o hindi. Internal freedom. You have the option. You have the liberty to choose. Okay? Next one is fundamental option. It is an option to commit oneself to the wholeness of reality. Okay? Para lang makita mo or makamit mo yung kabuuan ng gusto mong mangyari, Okay? Then you have to commit yourself to do or achieve what you wanted to accumulate or you wanted to attain. Okay? Now, full freedom, the last one. Full freedom is the freedom that is taken as both as a task and a risk. Meaning to say na, yung tingin mo sa pagpipili, okay, ng isang bagay or ng isang step is that ito ay isang obligasyon, ito ay isang duty, at ito ay isang risko. Ano bang risko na tinatawag? Risk or danger. Okay? So, now let's go to what we call as voluntariness. So, voluntariness is an aspect of what we call moral experience, wherein it is an act of man that continues from a preceding knowledge of a proposed end. Meaning to say that you have gained your knowledge and you wanted to achieve something. So you voluntarily do or perform an act in order for you to achieve something using the knowledge that you have accumulated already. Okay? And what we have said a while ago about knowledge is being aware of your action, the consequences of your action, the reason behind your action, and the result of your action. Okay? So voluntariness is an aspect of moral experience, comes in two forms or two kinds, and those are what we call the direct or indirect voluntariness. So direct voluntariness is that when a person voluntarily performs an act for himself or for somebody else. Like for example, pag sinabi ng teacher who wanted to recite and you raise your hand, then that is what we call a direct voluntariness. Okay? So ikaw mismo, nagboluntaryo ka na gawin ng isang bagay para sa iyo or para sa ibang tao, and that is what we call direct voluntariness. Now, what is important that I wanted to emphasize here is about indirect voluntariness. Paano ba itong indirect voluntariness? Meron ba talagang indirect voluntariness? Okay. This happens thus when a person voluntarily performs an act for somebody knowing that another act may result from it. Medyo komplikado, hindi ba? Okay, simplify. Indirect voluntariness is an awareness of the consequences, though this is not intended. Okay? These consequences of a deliberate act. Okay? Awareness or alam mo, okay, kung ano ang resulta ng iyong performance or ng actions mo. Kahit alam mong hindi intentional, mangyayari yung consequence na yun. Okay? So, like for example in studying, alam mo na kapag ikaw ay nag-aral ng mabuti, magkakaroon ka ng mataas na grade. Okay? So, pag voluntaryo ka or nagboluntaryo ka na mag-aral ng mabuti, magkakaroon ka ng high grade and you might pass, okay, and graduate. That is, okay, direct voluntariness. Paano naman yung indirect? Nag-aral ka, ginawa mo yung pag-aaral, okay, unknowingly, yun pala ang magiging daan para ikaw ay magkaroon ng napakagandang trabaho later on. You know very much na posibleng mangyari yon. Actually, yun nga ang gusto mong mangyari, magkaroon ng magandang trabaho later on after you graduate, right? So you know or you are aware that finding a good job is one of the consequences of your deliberate act of studying. Pero hindi naman talaga yung ang intention mo ngayon panahon. Kasi ang intention mo lang ngayon is just to finish your studies. It's just to attain a high grade. So yung intention mo ngayon hindi pa para maghanap ng magandang trabaho. Your only intention is to pass the exam, to get a high grade. But you are aware that one of the possible consequences of your studies is later on finding a good job. Okay? That is what we call indirect voluntariness. Alam mo na magiging posible yung consequence na yun, pero hindi naman talaga yun yung ina-attain mo sa ngayon. But you voluntarily did it. There's no force because it's voluntary. Walang nagdikta sa'yo na gawin mo ito. Ginawa mo lang para sa sarili mo. Para sa short-term achievement. But you were not able to recognize that there is a long-term result for your own actions. Okay, so that is the third and last aspect of what we call moral experiences. So, ibig sabihin, yung moral experiences na nagiging basehan ng ating moral development class, okay, ay ito yung mga tinatawag nating accumulation of knowledge, okay, voluntariness, and your freedom of the will. So, pag ginamit mo yung knowledge mo or you tried something else to become aware of some issues or matters, then in that process of gaining knowledge, you are acquiring moral experience. In the same way that if you voluntarily performs an act, knowing carefully or fully of the consequences of your action, then you are already in the process acquiring or accumulating moral experience. Lastly, if you are doing or performing an act through your reasons, using your freedom of the will, freedom to choose from alternatives, along the process, you are accumulating moral experiences. While you're accumulating moral experiences, you are forming also your morality. Your moral is being shaped gradually as you gradually experience things. Now, here comes a problem when a certain person is being challenged to choose between two alternatives which are both good. Halimbawa, nag-apply ka ng trabaho. Okay? Nag-apply ka ng trabaho sa dalawang kumpanya. The problem is, at the same time, this company wanted to hire you at the same period. So, sabay silang tumawag sa'yo, sabay silang nag-offer sa'yo ng trabaho. The problem is, what are you going to do? How are you going to solve or decide that particular problem that you are facing or challenge that you are facing? Okay. What do you call that state, class? Is moral dilemma. Yun yung tinatawag natin, nagkakaroon siya ng dilemma. Okay. Moral dilemma. It is the state by which a moral agent or a person is forced to decide kung ano ang action na gagawin niya between the two options. So, dalawang kumpanya tumawag sa'yo, kailangan mo nang mag-start ng trabaho, saan ka sa dalawang kumpanya? Okay? So, the stress, the pressure that you are going to experience in choosing between the two alternatives is what we call moral dilemma. Okay. So often, the person making the decision is confused between the morality of his supposed action and expected result. Okay. So yung example ko kanina, that is very clear or patent na nagkakaroon talaga ng confusion kung sino or ano ang i-choose ng isang individual. Pero meron pang mas malalim na tinatawag nating definition or meaning ng moral dilemma. Ito class yung the person, okay, is torn between the morality of his action at yung magiging resulta ng kanyang performance of ano. Parang yung, pag ginawa ko ito, okay, halimbawa, you are already a graduating student, but one of your teachers gave you, okay, and you are vying for flying colors. Okay? So parang ikaw ang napipintong maging cum laude ng iyong or magna cum laude or summa cum laude ng iyong batch or yung class. The problem is one among your teachers, okay, is giving you a failing grade because of a low score in the final exam or in your midterm exam, I should say. Now here comes the finals. Hindi ka nag-review. You are torn to decide whether the only recourse na naisip mo is mag-cheat. Kailangan mong mag-cheat kasi kung hindi masi-zero ka. Pag na-zero ka, hindi ka magiging summa cum laude, baka hindi ka pa makagraduate. Okay? So, isipin mo ngayon, ano kayang gagawin ko? Pag hindi ako nag-cheat, hindi ako makakagraduate. Hindi ko mamimit na maging cum laude or summa cum laude. Hindi ako makakagraduate. Okay? Pero kapag nag-cheat ako at natuklasan or nalaman nila na nag-cheat ako, I could be expelled and I will lose all, okay, the essence of the 3 long years, okay, na pag-study mo. So you are already experiencing that time, what you call moral dilemma. Gagawin ko ba ito? Alam kong immoral or bawal. Okay. It is against my conscience to cheat. But I know that if I will not cheat, I cannot pass. So you know already the consequence. So you are torn between the morality. Alam mong bawal yun. So the pressure that this particular situation is giving you is what we call moral dilemma. Kaya tinatawag natin, nagkakaroon yan ng moral dilemma. Okay? Now, when this dilemma occurs, first, the agent is required to do each of the 2 actions. Okay. So, sabi ng dalawang kumpanya, kailangan mong pumasok. So, sabay sila, parehas pa ng oras. Okay. So, a dilemma would occur. You do not know what to do. Next one, the agent is confronted with 2 options for which he is demanded to decide. Ngayon, example ko, you are being demanded. So, pinagpipili ka ngayon, sinong kumpanyang pupuntahan mo, si A or si B. Okay? Yung una kanina, you are required to do each of the 2 actions. So, kailangan mong mag-report sa dalawang kumpanya. So, parehas silang nagdi-demand. So, dilemma occurs. Number 3, the agent can do each of the actions. So, dalawang kumpanya, nagsabay sila, parang iniisip mo, kayang-kaya ko yan. Papasok ako ng 7 to 8 sa company A, papasok ako ng 9 to 10 sa company B. So, the agent can do each of the actions. But, the agent cannot do both. Hindi mo siya pwedeng pagsabayin. Kayang-kaya mong gawin sila ang trabaho kasi magkaiba naman ng time, pero hindi mo sila kayang pagsabayin. Okay? Hindi mo kayang gawin yung trabaho at the same period of time. Dilemma will occur. And lastly, dilemma exists when the agent seeks to condemn to moral failure. So that is the end of our topic on moral development. So thank you very much for listening to my discussion and watching the video. So please do not forget to subscribe, you like and share if you want, and then please post your comment and hit the bell, okay, your subscription means a lot, and it will boost the channel for students to be able to get hold of the discussions. So next time I will be uploading on the topic of ethics and category. That is already what is being represented in your module 3. Okay, so that's all for this discussion and for video. And again, thank you. Bye bye.